In this series, my friend, we're going to break down one of the best books ever written about money, one of the top-selling financial books of all time. This book will completely change the way you think about money. You'll begin to see money the way wealthy people see it. And when you start seeing money like they do, thinking like they do, you'll eventually live like they do. I truly believe this book can transform your financial life. Today, we begin with part 1 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad by the wonderful author Robert Kiyosaki. So grab a cup of coffee or whatever drink you love, and let's enjoy this together. Hello, my friends, and welcome to Book Brew Cafe. This is where coffee, music, and books come together. I'm the book barista, and if you're new here, the idea is simple. I read books, and I give you the value inside them. So if you want the benefit of reading without actually having to read, go ahead and subscribe. The book begins with an introduction that I honestly consider one of the best I've ever read. And before you think I've read thousands of books, no, I haven't even reached 100 yet. Still, this introduction is powerful. Robert Kiyosaki wanted to deliver one clear message. Wealth is a mindset, and poverty is also a mindset. It doesn't matter how much money you have. Someone can have $1 million and still think like a poor person and lose it all. Another person might have only $1,000, but think like a wealthy person, and that mindset alone can one day turn them into a millionaire. And if you really think about it, this is exactly what we see in real life. Some people start from nothing and slowly become wealthy, while others inherit millions and lose everything. Isn't that true? Of course it is. So wealth isn't really about the money. It's about the way you think. In the introduction, Kiyosaki makes a beautiful comparison between a rich mindset and a poor mindset. He says, "Once upon a time, long ago, I was born with 2 fathers, a rich dad and a poor dad. One father was highly educated, very smart. He held a PhD. The other didn't even finish 8th grade. Yet one struggled financially his entire life, while the other became one of the richest men in Hawaii. Both worked hard. Both were successful in their fields. Both earned good money. One father died, leaving behind tens of millions of dollars, charities, and places of worship he helped build. The other father left behind unpaid debts. One left his children wealth. The other left his children bills." Now here's the surprising part. Both fathers believed in education, but one focused only on academic education, while the other emphasized life education, alongside academics. And in just a moment, I'll explain what life education really means. Kiyosaki explains that when he was young, both fathers were middle class. The rich dad wasn't rich yet, and the poor dad wasn't poor yet, and that placed him in a very confusing position. Both were giving him advice, but he didn't know who he should listen to. The differences between them were unbelievable. For example, one father would say, "The love of money is the root of all evil." He believed that people chasing money and building businesses were the cause of poverty, hunger, and suffering. The other father believed the opposite. He said, "The lack of money is the root of all evil." Because if people weren't poor, there would be less theft, less crime, and less corruption. So who's right? We'll find out. Kiyosaki continues. One father always said, "I can't do that. I can't achieve this. I can't create that opportunity." The other father asked a different question. He asked, "How can I do it?" When he faced something difficult, he didn't shut the door. Instead, he asked, "What do I need to learn? What do I need to try?" Sometimes he spent a long time figuring things out, but in the end, he still did it. And even when he failed, he learned how. Do you see the difference? One father closed the door on his own mind. The other opened space for possibilities. One phrase stops your thinking. The other pushes you to think. And here's another huge difference. One father said, "Study hard so you can find a good company to work for." The other said, "Study hard so you can find a good company to buy." Wow. One father said, "My wife and kids are the reason I can't become rich. I have responsibilities. I have to feed them, support them, take care of them." The other father said, "My wife and kids are the reason I must become rich. I have to provide for them. I have to give them a good life." The difference in thinking is unbelievable. One father said, "Play it safe with money. Don't take risks." The other said, "Learn how to manage risks." One said, "Your home is your biggest investment." The other said, "Your home is a liability. It costs money. Bills, repairs, maintenance. It doesn't make you money." One said, "I'll never be rich, not even in my dreams." The other, even before he became wealthy, said, "I am rich. Wealthy people don't do that." He saw himself as rich, or at least on the path to becoming rich. And he didn't just talk, he acted. Kiyosaki says one of the greatest lessons his rich dad taught him was this: there's a difference between being broke and being poor. Being broke is temporary. Being poor is a lifetime mindset. Don't fear being broke. Fear staying poor. He explains that his poor dad was poor because of how he thought, how he behaved, and how he viewed money. His rich dad was rich because he thought like wealthy people, acted like wealthy people, and saw money the way wealthy people see it. Maybe you've heard this phrase before. Money is just a tool, not a goal. Money isn't important. Money is dirty. Tell them that's not true. If money isn't important, why do you work 8 hours a day until you're 60? Clearly, money matters. When you sit with wealthy people, you never hear them say, "Money is dirty," or "Money doesn't matter." And that's exactly why they're wealthy, while many of us remain middle class or poor. And there's no shame in that. But you must remove these harmful ideas from your mind. Change the way you think about money. See it as something natural. You have every right to build wealth. You have every right to leave your children millions. You have every right to give your family a dignified life. The world runs on money. That's reality. Unless you want to go back 5,000 years and trade apples for dates and sugar for water, this is the world we live in. And after that, Robert Kiyosaki ends the introduction with a very beautiful story that happened to him in Hawaii. He says that when he was 9 years old, in the year 1956, on the island of Hawaii, he went to his father while his father was reading the morning newspaper. "I was 9 years old," he says, "and I told him, 'Dad, teach me how to become rich.'" He says the question caught his father's attention. His father turned toward him and asked, "Why do you want to become rich?" Kiyosaki says, "I told him, because Jimmy, my friend from school, his mom passed by today driving a very new, very luxurious car. She picked him up and they went to their house on the beach to spend the weekend." In simple words, they were going to their beach house just for the weekend, and then back to their normal house. Yes, my friend who's listening, the rich have a beach house they visit only on weekends. A house, just for weekends. While you and I spend our weekends at IKEA or at the cinema. Kiyosaki continues, "My father said to me, 'Are you sure they were going to their weekend house? Did they say that?' I answered, 'Yes, I swear they said that.' He says, "My father looked at me for a moment, then went back to reading the newspaper, and I stayed standing there, waiting for an answer. It shocked his father. After a while, his father put the newspaper aside. It looked like he was thinking. Then he said, 'All right, my son, if you want to become rich, then you must learn how to make money. You need to learn how to make money.'" Kiyosaki says, "I asked him, 'And how do I make money?' His father replied, 'All right, you have to use your mind.' Then he went silent, as if he was saying, 'Don't talk too much, and don't embarrass me. This is the most I can teach you.'" Anyway, let's go back to Robert Kiyosaki. He says, "The very next day, I went straight to my close friend Mike." And no, this is not Jimmy. Jimmy was already at the weekend house, my friend who's listening. Kiyosaki continues, "I presented the idea of partnership to my friend Mike. I asked him, 'Do you want to be my partner?' Mike replied, 'My partner? Partner in what?' Robert said, 'You'll be my partner in the process of making money.' He says, I told him, 'Don't you want to be like Jimmy? They have toys, money, a house on the beach, and their life looks great. Don't you want to be like that? Mike answered, "Of course I want to be like him." So Robert said, "All right then, let's become partners and learn how to make money." From that moment on, he says, we started brainstorming. We started thinking about every possible way we could make money, until we finally came up with a great idea. We shook hands and decided to begin the process of making money. That was it. We had work ahead of us for the coming weeks. Kiyosaki continues. For several weeks, we went door to door, knocking on our neighbors' doors. We would tell them, "Please, give us your leftover toothpaste tubes." Some people gave them to us. Others asked, "What do you want to do with them?" And we would answer, "Please, this is a secret. We can't tell you right now." So we kept collecting leftover toothpaste tubes. We also collected soda cans, Pepsi cans, milk cartons, and many other things. Eventually, he says, we opened a factory in my father's garage. My father was so impressed that he started bringing his friends to the garage just to show them these two boys who had opened a production line. There was white powder everywhere, cans everywhere, and a complete mess. He says, after some time, my father even attended the ceremony for launching our first counterfeit coin. Mike and I melted metal from milk bottle caps and poured it into circular lids. That was our first product. Kiyosaki says, the night we were making the coin, my father was standing there, watching us. Then he asked, "What are you two doing?" I told him, Kiyosaki says, "Dad, we're on our way to becoming rich. I'm doing exactly what you told me. I'm making money." He says, I pulled out the coin and showed it to him. I said, "This is what I made, Dad." Kiyosaki continues. He held the coin, examined it while smiling, and then he started laughing. Then he said, "Son, this is counterfeiting." At that time, Kiyosaki says, we didn't even know what the word counterfeiting meant. So my father explained it to us. And in that moment, our dreams collapsed. You could see the sadness written on our faces. He says, my father felt sorry for us. Then he said, "You want to learn how to make money? Make money means earn it, not make it, meaning fake it." Kiyosaki says, I looked at him and said, "Yes, please teach me." Then my father said, "Listen to me. Go to Mike's father. He's the one who will teach." Kiyosaki continues. Mike and I looked at each other. Then we looked back at my father, and we said, "Mike's father?" He replied, "Yes." Then he explained, Mike's father knows how to turn money into wealth, but Jimmy's father works for a prestigious company. The company is the one that gave him the car, the house, and the high salary. Don't worry, one day Jimmy's father will end up as just another middle-class man. But Mike's father, he paused, then said, he's smart. He knows how to turn money into wealth, and one day, he will become rich. And my friend who's listening, Mike's father did become rich. He is the rich dad that Robert Kiyosaki talks about. Kiyosaki says, Mike went to his father and told him, "Dad, we want you to teach us how to turn money into wealth." Mike's father set a day for us to meet him. It was Saturday. When Saturday came, we went to Mike's house. That was the meeting place where we would sit with his father. Kiyosaki says, at that time, the house was wooden, a little broken, and not very organized. But he had a small office, and he had employees. Mike's father owned 2 stores and a warehouse. Kiyosaki says, there were 3 employees gathered with Mike's father that Saturday. We arrived and stood in line. And I want you to pay attention to the line, my friend who's listening. He continues, after a while, the first person came out. Then a lady went in. After a bit, the lady came out, and a third person went in. And after a long wait, it was finally our turn. He says, Mike and I entered. Mike's father was standing behind his desk. As he pulled out his chair, he asked us, "Are you 2 ready, boys?" We nodded our heads yes. Kiyosaki continues. Then he looked directly at me and said, my son Mike told me that you want to learn how to earn money. Is that correct, Robert? Kiyosaki says, "Of course, Mike's father was intimidating, so I answered, 'Yes, sir, that's correct.' He said, 'All right, I'm going to give you an offer. I will teach you how to earn money, but I will not teach you in the traditional way. Not by talking, not by lectures, not like what happens in schools. No, I will teach you the way life teaches. You will learn while you work for me, and whoever doesn't want to work for me will not learn anything.' Then he said, 'This is my offer. Either you accept it or you refuse it.' Kiyosaki says, I told him, 'Okay, can I ask you a question?' He said, 'No, there is no room for questions. This is the offer. Either you accept it or you refuse it.' Then he continued, 'If you don't learn how to make decisions quickly, you will never learn how to earn money. Opportunities come and go fast, and if you're not ready to decide quickly, the opportunity will pass you by. You wanted someone to teach you how to earn money, and this is the opportunity that has been given to you now. Either accept it or refuse it.'" Kiyosaki says, "So I told him, I accept. And Mike also said, I accept. He said, 'Excellent. Mrs. Martin will take you to the workplace. She will explain the work and the place. And I will pay you 10 cents for working 3 hours every Saturday.' Kiyosaki says, "When he said Saturday, I told him, 'But Saturday is my baseball day.'" He continues. His tone changed. Anger appeared on his face, and he said, "This is the offer. Either you accept it or you refuse it. Either you learn or you go play." Kiyosaki says, "I quickly said, 'No, no, no, I accept.' And that's how I chose learning over playing." Then Kiyosaki says to you, the listener, "And now you ask yourself, my friend, when this choice comes to you, do you choose to learn or do you go play? Life is like this, my friend. Choices, and you choose." He continues, "The days passed, and we started working in the store. Our job was simple: cleaning the shelves, removing dust, organizing the items." He says, "Every Saturday we worked 3 hours and received 10 cents for each hour." Then he says, "What annoyed me was that as soon as I received the 30 cents, I would buy 3 children's comic magazines, each one for 10 cents. He continues, "And what annoyed me even more? By the middle of the week, I had already finished reading all the magazines, and I would sit there, waiting for Saturday to come, so I could work again and buy more magazines." Kiyosaki says, "This situation continued for 4 full weeks, and the last time we saw Mike's father was that very first meeting. After that, we never saw him again." He continues, "One day, my father passed by and asked me, 'So, tell me, are you learning?' I told him, 'No, honestly, we're just working in the store for 3 hours every Saturday, and we haven't seen Mike's father since that first day.' He says, my father looked surprised and said, 'What? You haven't seen him since that day?' I said, 'No, we haven't seen him.' He said, 'So you're telling me he hasn't taught you anything?' I said, 'Honestly, he hasn't taught us anything.' He said, 'No, no, no, this doesn't make sense. He's exploiting you. You're children, and he's making you work in his store.' Then he said, 'Listen carefully. Go tell him this. Either you teach me properly, like normal people do, or you pay me more money than this tiny amount. These 30 cents are worth nothing. And don't stay with him. Don't waste your time. He is taking advantage of you.'" And remember, my friend who's listening, this father is the poor dad. Kiyosaki says, "Honestly, I filled myself with negativity, and I went straight to the store and met Mike." He continues, "I went to him and said, 'Mike, listen to me. I'm done. I can't handle this anymore. It's been 4 weeks. We haven't seen your father, and all we're getting is 30 cents for arranging shelves.' He continues, 'And honestly, I don't have time for this. I want to learn how to make money. and your father is wasting my time. Either he raises my pay, or I quit," he says. Mike looked at me and said, "Robert, my father told me that one day you would come and say these exact words. And when you do, I'm supposed to tell you this. My father wants to meet you this Saturday." Kiyosaki says, I stared at him. My eyes widened. I said, "No way, Mike. You knew all of this? And you left me suffering all this time?" He says, "Anyway, that Saturday we went to meet Mike's father. We stood in line again. His employees were there, and we waited." Kiyosaki says, "But this time, it was different." He continues. He finished his meetings with his employees. Then he picked up the phone and started talking. For half an hour. He says, and I was sitting outside, burning with frustration, while he was calmly talking on the phone. He continues. Finally, with complete coldness, he ended the call, opened the door, and said, "Come on, it's your turn." Then Kiyosaki says, "And my friend who's listening, I want you to focus on this conversation, because in my opinion, this is the most important conversation in the entire introduction." Kiyosaki says, my rich dad was sitting back in a swivel chair. He looked at me and said, "Robert, I heard that you want a raise, or that you plan to quit." Kiyosaki continues, "At that moment, I was just a child, but inside, I was full of frustration. So I exploded. I started crying and said, 'Yes, you broke your promise. You promised you would teach us, but for 4 weeks, we haven't seen you. We haven't heard a single word from you. I even stopped playing football to come work for you, and now I feel like you're just using me." Kiyosaki says, he looked at me quietly and listened until I finished. Then he said something strange. He said, "That's not bad. In less than a month, you have already become like most of my employees." I was confused, so I asked him, "What do you mean? How are you teaching me? What exactly are you teaching me?" He replied calmly, "I am teaching you." Kiyosaki continues. I couldn't believe it, so I said, "How are you teaching me? You haven't even talked to me for 4 weeks." But he repeated again, "I am teaching you." Kiyosaki says, I became angry and I told him, "You call this teaching? You make me work for a few cents." He looked at me carefully, then said, "Now you're starting to sound exactly like my employees. Just like the people who used to work for me, the ones who either quit or got fired." I said, "Then tell me, why do you keep saying you are teaching me?" He replied, "Who told you that I'm not? I am teaching you." Kiyosaki says, I told him, "So you're teaching me without meeting me? Without even talking to me? How does that work?" Then he smiled slightly and said, "Oh, so you want me to teach you the same way school teaches you? Sit you down and give you lectures. That's not my way." He leaned forward and said something I never forgot. My way is to teach you the way life teaches you, and life teaches you without ever speaking. Wow. Kiyosaki says, and honestly, he was right. Then he continued, I am teaching you the lessons of life. If you learn them, you will succeed. But if you don't, life will control you. It will push you into debt, into responsibilities, and from one job to another job. So I asked him, what lesson did you teach me by making me work 3 hours every Saturday for 30 cents? Because the only thing I learned is that you are cheap. Kiyosaki says, he laughed. Then he said, change your perspective. Stop blaming me. Instead, change yourself. When you face a problem, learn how to solve it. Learn how to benefit from it. Don't be like most people. They want the whole world to change for them, but they never try to change themselves. Then my rich dad continued, Remember this carefully. It is much easier to change yourself than to change someone else. Kiyosaki says, I told him, I still don't understand. He replied, then stop blaming me for your problems. I said, but you are the problem. He smiled and said, but if I really am the problem, then tell me something. What options do you have now? Kiyosaki says, I told him, it's simple. Either you raise my salary, or I quit. He smiled, then said, exactly. You just behaved like half the people in the world. They complain about their salary, and if they don't get a raise, they quit, and they search for another job. They believe the next job will solve the problem, and the cycle continues. Then I asked him, so what do you want me to do? Accept the 30 cents and stay quiet? He said, and that is exactly what the other half of people do. Kiyosaki says, now I was truly confused. So I asked, then what is the solution? Then he tapped my head and said, the solution is inside here, your mind. And then he said the lesson that changed my life. A job and a salary will never make you rich. Then he asked me, so what do you think? Did I teach you or not? Robert says, I looked at the ground. I thought for a moment. Then I said, yes, you taught me. He said, good. Are you ready to learn more or not? I said, yes, I'm ready. He said, all right. From today, you will work in the store with no 30 cents. Then he asked me, do you agree? I said, I agree. He turned to his son Mike and asked, and do you agree too? Mike said, I agree. He said, all right, go to the store. Robert says, I walked out completely shocked. I came wanting a raise or planning to quit, and now I'm going back to the store to work with no salary. And with that, my friend who's listening, the great introduction of this book comes to an end. In the next video, we'll talk about the first lesson of the 6 lessons that the rich dad taught Robert Kiyosaki. The lessons that made him one of the wealthiest people. If you'd like to follow the rest of the series with us, don't forget to subscribe. And if you enjoyed this episode, share it with others so they can join us. And of course, don't forget to like the video if you found value in it. And now, the knowledge dose for today has ended, my friend. I'll see you next week with a better and more beautiful dose. Thank you for watching, and thank you for your priceless time. Goodbye.